A young emperor walks into a quiet room, expecting nothing unusual, and then he sees it. Something in the corner, something moving, something making a sound, but not something he could immediately make sense of. For a long moment, his mind refuses to accept that the thing in front of him was ever a person at all. But it was. Not long ago, this had been one of the most admired people in the imperial palace. Now, it was almost impossible to recognize. For more than 2,000 years, people have struggled to imagine what he saw that day. And the most disturbing part wasn't what had happened. It was who was responsible. According to ancient records, the person behind it wasn't an invading army. It wasn't a foreign enemy. It wasn't even the emperor. It was someone who had once been known for extraordinary loyalty. How does someone become capable of something like this? To answer that, we have to go back nearly 30 years, back to a time when there was no palace at all. Welcome to Paws&Clues with Ajax. I'm Ajax, and every mystery leaves a trace. Today, we're following one of history's darkest. Long before anyone feared her, she was just a young woman named Lü Zhi. She was born into a respected family near the end of the Qin dynasty, a time when China was slowly cracking apart under its own weight. Her father supposedly had a gift. Historians wrote that he believed he could look at a stranger, talk to them once, and know exactly what kind of man they'd become. And one day, he met a local official named Liu Bang. To everyone else, Liu Bang looked like a complete disaster. He was almost 40, he drank too much, he hated hard work, and he had no money, no title, and no real education. But there was one thing about him that numbers and titles could never explain. People liked him. He wasn't the strongest fighter or the cleverest strategist in the room, but when Liu Bang spoke, men wanted to follow him. He made people feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves, and that kind of charisma is rarer than any army. Her father saw it. So when he announced that his daughter would marry this man, people thought he'd lost his mind. For now, though, they were just a husband and wife trying to survive, and survival was hard. Money was scarce, food was scarce, and while Liu Bang worked his low-ranking job, Lü Zhi did everything else, raising their children, working the land, and caring for his elderly parents. She wasn't dreaming of power. She was just trying to keep her family alive. Then everything changed. The Qin dynasty was collapsing under crushing taxes, forced labor, and brutal laws, and people finally snapped. Rebellions broke out everywhere, and in the middle of that chaos, Liu Bang made a mistake that should have ended his life. He was escorting prisoners to a labor camp when several of them escaped, and under Qin law, the penalty for that was simple. It was the end for him. So he ran, and vanished into the countryside. And just like that, Lü Zhi went from being the wife of a minor official to the wife of a wanted fugitive. She had no idea if she'd ever see him again, but she still had children to feed and a family to protect. So while her husband gathered followers and slowly became a leader of the rebellion, she stayed behind and carried the weight of everything. But the war wasn't done with her. It was about to come find her too. For years, China was a battlefield. The old dynasty was gone, but peace never came, and dozens of warlords tore at what was left. Two men rose above the rest. One was Xiang Yu, a brilliant and terrifying general. The other was the same man everyone once wrote off as a lazy drunk, Liu Bang. But while his star was rising, Lü Zhi's world was falling apart. During the war, she and several of Liu Bang's relatives were captured by Xiang Yu's forces, and she stayed a prisoner for nearly 2 years. The earliest records claim she was kept as a bargaining chip, a way to pressure her husband, and historians still argue about how close she came to being executed. Think about that. Your husband is out there getting more powerful every month, and you're trapped, unable to help, unable to escape, just waiting. Then, in 202 BC, it finally broke. Liu Bang defeated Xiang Yu, the Han dynasty was born, the fugitive was now the emperor, and the woman everyone once pitied was now the Empress of China. This was supposed to be the ending, the happy one. She'd stood by him when he had nothing, she'd survived captivity, and she'd raised their son, Liu Ying, who was already the crown prince. Everything she'd endured had led to this one moment. At least that's what she believed. Because while she'd been surviving wars, someone else had quietly slipped into Liu Bang's life. Her name was Lady Qi. We know she was young and extraordinarily talented, a gifted singer and dancer who shared the emperor's love of Chu-style music and poetry. And here's where it's easy to get the story wrong. It's tempting to cast Lady Qi as simply the beautiful rival, the passive victim of someone else's hatred. But the historical record tells a more complicated truth. Lady Qi was not passive. She was fighting. When she had a son, Liu Ruyi, and Liu Bang began saying the boy reminded him of himself, she pressed her advantage. Hard. The Shiji, China's great historical record written by Sima Qian, tells us that Lady Qi went to the emperor day and night, weeping, pleading, lobbying him relentlessly to remove Liu Ying as crown prince and replace him with her son. She didn't whisper this once in private. She made it a sustained campaign that stretched across years, and she had the one thing Empress Lü could never have, the emperor's heart. And it was working. Liu Bang genuinely believed Liu Ying was too gentle, too soft to rule an empire built on war. He began saying it openly. He wanted Lady Qi's son on the throne. Now understand what that meant. Changing the crown prince wasn't a family argument. In an imperial court, deposing an heir meant every official, every general, every ally who had backed Liu Ying now had a target on them. It meant Liu Ying himself could not safely remain alive. It meant Empress Lü, who had survived captivity and poverty and 2 decades of holding the family together, could watch everything she had endured become worthless in a single imperial decree. So here is the historical truth this story requires you to hold in both hands at once. Lady Qi was fighting for her son. Empress Lü was fighting for her son. And in that palace, there was only room for one of them to win. Lü Zhi understood that better than anyone. And here's what matters. At this point, she was a frightened mother who could see the cliff her son was standing on. So she made a decision, not to destroy anyone, but to protect him. And protecting him would require something she had never shown anyone before. In the movies, royal families fight with swords. In reality, the deadliest battles at court were fought with whispers. And this is the moment Lü Zhi revealed a mind nobody knew she had. She went quietly to Zhang Liang, one of the most brilliant strategists in the empire, and she asked for help. And what he told her seemed impossible. If you want to save the crown prince, bring back the 4 white-haired sages. These were 4 legendary scholars who'd lived in seclusion for years. Liu Bang himself had tried to recruit them, and they'd refused him to his face. No emperor could command them. And that is exactly the thing Lü Zhi understood that her husband never did. You cannot force respected people to stand behind you. The harder you push, the harder they pull away. You have to make them choose you. So where Liu Bang had ordered, she persuaded. The records don't fully explain how she did it, but she succeeded where an emperor had failed. One day, those 4 old scholars simply appeared, standing beside the crown prince. When Liu Bang saw them there, he understood instantly. These were men respected across all of China, and if they had publicly chosen his son, then removing that son would turn the empire's most respected voices against the throne. According to the records of the grand historian, he looked at the scholars, then at his son, and admitted defeat. The crown prince would stay. It was her first great victory, and it changed her. For the first time, she had discovered that she could shape the fate of an empire without ever raising her voice. But it came with a price. Then, in 195 BC, the emperor died. The court dressed in white, the empire mourned, but underneath it all, everyone was asking the same quiet question. Who holds the power now? The new emperor, Liu Ying, was just a teenager, kind, gentle, compassionate, loved by the people. But inside a palace, kindness gets mistaken for weakness, and real power passed to one person. Empress Dowager Lü. For the first time in her life, no husband stood above her, no rival could go over her head. And here is where the woman began to disappear. Years of fear, years of watching another woman take her place, years of nearly losing her son. All of it had been building, with nowhere to go. Now there was nothing holding it back. Lady Qi was the first to feel it. Her titles were stripped, her silk robes traded for a prisoner's rough clothing, her feet put in stocks, and she was sent to grind grain, hour after hour, a convict in the palace she once ruled beside the emperor. But it wasn't enough, because one person still stood between Lü Zhi's family and total safety, and it was someone nobody believed she would truly harm. That person was Liu Ruyi, Lady Qi's son, the boy Liu Bang had once wanted to crown. As long as he lived, he was someone a future rebellion could rally around. So she summoned him to the capital. But the young emperor, Liu Ying, knew exactly what his mother was planning, and despite everything, he still saw Ruyi as his little brother. So he protected him. He ate with him, slept in the same room, and kept him close. If his mother wanted to reach the boy, she'd have to get past her own son first. And for a while, That was enough. But Lü Zhi had learned one lesson above all others. Power belongs to the people who know how to wait. And then, one morning before dawn, the emperor left for a hunting trip. He invited his brother, but the boy was still asleep, and Liu Ying didn't want to wake him, so he left without him. A tiny decision, and if these accounts are accurate, it sealed the child's fate. The moment the emperor was gone, Liu had the boy brought to her. No trial, no accusation, no chance. Sources say he was given poisoned wine, and he was gone soon after. He was only a child. And with him gone, there was no one left who could realistically challenge Liu Ying's throne. For most rulers, that would have been the end of it. It wasn't the end for her, because Lady Qi was still alive, and what happened next has been recorded for more than 2,000 years. Later generations came to call it Ren Ji, the human swine. I'm not going to describe what was done, step by step. What I'll tell you instead is what was left. Imagine a person you once knew, her voice, her laugh, the way she moved, and then imagine all of that taken away, not in anger, deliberately, systematically, her senses, one by one, her ability to speak, to hear, to see, to reach for anything. Everything that made her a person, everything that made her human, stripped away until what remained could no longer be recognized as the woman she had been. They placed her in a pigsty, and they called her that. Not a person anymore, a thing, something that breathed but no longer existed in any way a living person could understand. That was the point. The cruelty wasn't incidental, it was architectural. Every choice was made to erase her, not just from the court, but from the category of human beings altogether. And then, Empress Dowager Lu did something almost impossible to understand. She sent for her own son, the emperor. "Liu Ying," she reportedly said, "there is something I want you to see." He walked into that quiet room expecting nothing unusual, and instead came face to face with what was left of Lady Qi. And now you know whose eyes we were looking through in the very beginning. The histories say he just stood there, unable to speak, until finally he turned to the people around him and said the words that have echoed through China ever since. This is not something a human being could do. And he wasn't talking about Lady Qi. He was talking about his own mother. From that day on, he was never the same. According to historical records, his health and spirit declined rapidly afterward. He pulled away from ruling almost entirely, handed the empire to her in everything but name, and died only a few years later, still a young man. Officially, he was Emperor Hui of Han. In truth, he was a son who never recovered from what he had seen. Lü Zhi got everything she had fought for. At the beginning of this story, I asked a simple question. How does someone become capable of something like this? Maybe there isn't a simple answer. I'll let you decide for yourself. Thanks for watching Paws and Clues with Ajax. I hope you found today's story as haunting as I did. And until next time, keep following the clues. I'll see you in the next one.